child tax credit, for Catherine Cortez Masto's work as well on the earned income tax credit. Everywhere I go in Colorado, I meet parents who are working hard, who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to scrape by. And like many Americans across the country, they are wrestling with a legacy of 50 years of trickle-down economics that has benefited the wealthiest Americans while leaving middle-class families behind. Today, I don't even need that, Chuck. Today, thank you. Today, the United States is wrestling with the highest wealth inequality that we've had in decades, the biggest income inequality that we've had in decades, and one of the highest childhood poverty rates in wealthy nations. That is a moral disgrace, as my friend Cory Booker tells us. In 2021, for the very first time, 62 million Americans, including American kids, including 1 million kids in Colorado, received the expanded child tax credit, and we cut America's childhood poverty in half as a result. It was the most significant reduction in childhood poverty in our nation's history. We have to fight to make these changes permanent. That's why we are here today. It is crazy for us to not cut taxes for people who are working for a living, who are in our middle class. That's exactly what the child tax credit does. It's the best investment that we have made in children and working families in generations. As a former school superintendent, I can tell you there is not a more important tax policy that we can pursue. And I am, with your permission, Leader, I'm going to give it to our leader first, to Senator Schumer, who has been a tireless advocate to cut childhood poverty in this country. Senator Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And first, I want to thank Michael Bennet. He has been an amazing and relentless leader, and he does this out of pure passion in his heart and intellect because he knows how important this is. One of the best things we did when we had the majority early, well, we didn't have the majority, in 2020 after COVID, was to pass an expanded child tax credit. Unfortunately, when we were negotiating this, when I was negotiating this with Secretary Mnuchin, they would only do it for a period of time. But it did so much good. By some reports, it took close to half the children in America out of poverty. Incredible. Something we'd sought for years and years and decades. But it expired because they wouldn't extend it for more than a certain period of time. Our mission is to make that permanent. And that's what Michael has done with this legislation. The costs of caring for a child are dramatically skyrocketing, even before the tariffs. And now it's even worse. The cost of child care is incredible. And now Americans are are finding even greater costs with the Trump tariff tax, about $5,000 a family. And it'll particularly hard hit families with children. So the child tax credit is virtually essential to making America the kind of place we've always wanted it to be. To reducing, you want to reduce income inequality, which is one of the scourges of our economy, do the child tax credit. And helping our children, helping our parents buy for the children the school supplies they need, and the medicines they need, and the nutrition they need, when so many are deprived of that now, would make America so much a better place, not only next year, but 10 years and 20 years on into the future, because it will pay huge dividends. So I am in fully support of this effort. I also want to thank Catherine Cortez Masto, who's talking about the earned income tax credit for people who don't have children. That's another thing that's very important, and we have to expand. If we're going to make America a fair place, and where everybody has a chance, where every child has a chance, there's nothing more important than passing Senator Bennett's legislation, which I'm proud to co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Our chairman, Rosa DeLauro, who is the person who conceived our superstar who conceived of the expanded tax credit, introduced it in the House long before any of us were working on this, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
Chairman Rosa DeLauro.
Thank you so much, Senator. And And Senator Cortez Masto, if you just give me a moment, but this is 3 of the CTC child tax credit, 6. We are missing Sherrod Brown and Richie Torres and Susan Del Bene. But it was really such an extraordinary effort on all our parts. So it's a critical moment. American Family Act, the expansion of the child tax credit, is exactly what we need to respond to what is a cost of living crisis in this country. It's crushing the middle class, the working class, and vulnerable families. Across this nation, families live today paycheck to paycheck. Prices for everyday goods, essential services, eggs to gasoline, medicine to child care, they continue to rise. And we have a president who campaigned on lowering prices. He pledged, and I quote, bring food costs down on day one. Instead, the opposite has happened. His own USDA recently reported egg prices could rise 41% over the next year. And since taking office, he has done nothing to help American families. It's inexcusable because there is a clear, a proven pathway to help families who are struggling with high prices. The improved, expanded child tax credit. It's one that we passed as part of the American Rescue Plan. It was historic, a win for the American people, and the data proves it delivered the greatest middle-class tax cut in a generation. It reached nearly 36 million families, 61 million children, an antidote to child poverty and to inflation. It gave real money back to millions of working families in the form of a monthly check, cutting child hunger by 1/4, bringing child poverty to the lowest recorded levels in history. And you know what? It returned $10 for every dollar spent. How? Because the child tax credit helps children learn more, earn more, grow up healthier. It improves educational attainment. It lowers health care costs, and it reduces the encounters with the juvenile justice system. And it lifts a lifetime earning potential. You know, it helps more children access services like Head Start, allows parents the freedom to prioritize work, school, or other personal investments that raise their earning potential. The bill we are proud to reintroduce today, the American Family Act, would create the strongest version of the child tax credit ever. It indexes the value of the credit to inflation. It establishes a baby bonus to help families in that very critical first year. You know, indexing the child tax credit, which we're not able to do with the American Rescue Plan, is an essential aspect of our plan. It will make sure that the value of the credit is not diminished over time. We have seen too many of our social programs that lose their effectiveness because they do not keep up with what is inflation over time. And we need to have big fights in the Congress about whether to increase that value of the programs. And it's years before we're able to get anything done. Let me just, reference a couple of things here. You know, the child tax credit simply worked. It worked better than just about any other government program anywhere. It worked. And we need to start 2025 advocating loudly for the American Family Act. And, you know, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. I have to say this. There are Republicans like Senator Mitt Romney, Senator Josh Hawley, even Vice President J.D. Vance have supported the child tax credit because the evidence that it helped families is really so overwhelming. It helped people like Johnny Walls, a technician in West Virginia, who told the Daily Caller, a conservative news outlet, and I quote, "The child tax credit enabled me to pay my rent. It meant that I had a place to live. I knew that no matter what, my son and I had a roof over their heads." And people like Reagan, who couldn't be with us today, who had the child tax credit, supported her family during the pandemic and afterward. They're not isolated stories. Millions of Americans just like those whose lives were changed by the child tax credit. And as the 2017 tax cuts expire, Congress will have to decide, do we listen to the massive corporations, the biggest corporations that are trying to lock in billions more in profits, or do we have a child tax credit? Republican leadership has already shown their hand. They want to give corporate lobbyists everything they ask for and then some, ignoring the voices of their own side calling for a change. The expanded child tax credit, it did lift millions of children out of poverty. It provided economic security to the middle class, to the working class, and to vulnerable families. Will risk becoming a footnote in history unless we fight for it. We can't allow that to happen. My promise to all of you is that I will fight as hard as I can with every ally, any ally that I can find on either side of the aisle, to make sure that the child tax credit is the top of our policy agenda. The time to act is now. Cost of living crisis is growing. Congress has the best tool to address it sitting at our fingertips. This is not the moment for half measures or a compromise. Quite frankly, I don't want to hear it's all that we can get. Baloney. We need to get the whole 9 yards here. So, and it's time for bold and courageous action. I know my colleagues will not shrink from these goals, and we're not going to accept pennies on the dollar. We need to respond to the needs of the American people. And if Republicans shrink from this challenge and refuse to join Democrats in order to keep their promises, the American people will never forget. And I thank all of you. I know I went longer than my colleagues, and they're going to kill me. But anyway,
What are you talking about?
anyway, and my Senator Cortez Masto.
Yes, yes, yes.
Go for it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well done, Rosa.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Rosa, Catherine.
All right. So, listen, we are here today because American families are struggling with high prices. We see it in our home states. We see it everywhere. And this is happening in red states. It's happening in blue states. It's happening everywhere in between. It's being felt across the country. And Americans, quite frankly, are sick of it. Now, we also know that President Trump said he'd lower American prices on day one when he got into office. Well, this is what, month 3 of this chaotic administration, and prices have only gone up. The outlook on our economy is worse than it's been in years. And between President Trump's funding freezes, mass firings, and completely baffling tariffs on our closest allies, it's not looking like things are going to get better anytime soon. And so it is important that we start focusing on our families and making sure that the focus stays with our families. And that's why it is important at the end of the day that we support not only the child tax credits that we see, but also the earned tax credits. Let me just say this. Expanding the child tax credits, as Senator Bennet is proposing, would be a lifeline for working families with children. It would help ensure all Americans have the resources they need to care for their kids. And for working families without children, we also need to consider their needs. And that's why the Earned Income Tax Credit is so important. Now, I call this the worker tax credit. These are individuals that are families. These are folks that do not have children, but they still are struggling. They're working hard, but they're still struggling at the end of the day. And so we've got to focus on them as well. And there are currently 6 million hardworking Americans who don't earn enough to support themselves and whose taxes are forcing them below the poverty line. They do their jobs every day, just like the rest of us, but sometimes they even have multiple jobs. And that's not enough. More working Americans need a tax break, and that's what this legislation does. This bill, the worker tax cuts bill that we are talking about, along with the child tax credits, the workers' tax bill, this bill cuts taxes for working class Americans without children, and that would include 160,000 Nevadans. It triples the average tax relief these Americans receive from the existing worker tax cut, and it extends the tax cut for workers under the age of 25 and over the age of 64, 2 groups that were previously ineligible for it. With costs skyrocketing right now, thanks to the Trump administration, listen, millions of hardworking families, they deserve more money in their pocket. They deserve the priority of us to focus on how we keep their costs lower and focus on making their lives a little bit better. So I am pleased to join not only Senator Bennet, but all of my colleagues here in both houses and my colleagues who were before us fighting for this fight, like Sherrod Brown, and ensuring we're continuing to put the focus in this country on where we know it matters most, and that is to those hardworking individuals and families in this country. So thank you. We need to pass both these pieces of legislation.
Thank you.
Amen.
We have the great Cory Booker,
Bravo!
champion
Bravo!
from day one.
So we all know this. Our tax policy, our budgets are a reflection of our values. It's a reflection of who we are. It is a reflection of our national character. And we're in a moment right now that is a moral moment in our country where a tax bill is being pushed that would ultimately give the wealthiest in our nation who don't need our help, who are doing extraordinarily well, give the wealthiest in our nation massive, massive tax breaks. But we know what the true wealth of our nation is. The true wealth of our nation is not measured by bank accounts. The true wealth of our nation is our children. The genius of our children and the families that support and nurture and nourish those children. Those families in America are struggling now more than ever. Prices are going up. Inflation is going up. Challenging just to make ends meet and to keep roofs overhead. I am proud to be standing with this group of folks right now that know that we should be allowing hardworking Americans and American families to keep more of their tax dollars. We saw through the first expansion of the child tax credit just years ago that we were able to cut child poverty nearly in half, proving once and for all that the moral obscenity of child poverty in America is not an inevitable conclusion, an inevitable reality. It is a policy choice. And now we are again faced with a choice. By this bill we're putting forward, we're seeing who do we prioritize. Do we prioritize our babies or our billionaires? Do we prioritize our moms or our millionaires? The wealthiest in our country do not need our help. It is working families, American families, that need our help and support. I'm proud to yet again stand with this coalition. From the earned income tax credit to the child tax credit, let's show what we value in America. Let's show that we stand for working people, for our families, and for the greatest natural resource our nation has, which is the genius of our children. If this is a moral moment, our budget should reflect our values. I want to end with saying this. You know, tax policy, it can seem mind-numbing. It could seem, I'm sorry, Brother Wyden, this is not the sexiest element of American policy, but it is perhaps the most important. It is perhaps the most important. We know in our country that the value of this nation and the security of our future, it in fact is a national security issue, is how well an American family can have. I know of no better way to secure the American dream than making sure every family could have the resources they need to provide for their children. What this president is proposing right now is an affront to the American dream. It's a violation of our values. It will punish tens of millions of Americans. What we are proposing is an effort to redeem the dream, to make sure that every generation can dream this country anew, can to achieve more in their generation than we have been able to in ours. This is a moment of moral urgency, and I'm excited about the possibilities of this legislation we're putting before us now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well
Thank
said,
you,
Cory.
Senator. Appreciate it.
The
Mr. Chairman.
whole world has seen how hard it is to follow Cory Booker. I am barely a household word in my own household, and we're so glad that Cory Booker told America what's really on the line. And I'm just going to make a couple quick comments. First, with respect to Social Security, another essential program, the chainsaws are coming out for earned benefits. Second, with respect to Medicaid, a lifeline for millions of people, paying most of the nursing home bill. Same situation. We're fighting to make sure that people are going to be able to get care and families can take care of loved ones. And now we've got to deal with these crucial programs for kids and families. And you're going to hear a lot of talk. I was listening to my friend Rosa talk about how essential it is to not cut corners on this program, to make sure that it's really there for families. I'm sure, Rosa and friends, we're going to hear a lot from the Republicans. We can't afford to do this. We can't afford to do that. Folks, we can't afford not to cover the millions of people affected by these programs. You've got a choice. Either you be there for the families at this crucial time and they can get help with paying essentials, or you pay for everything for years to come when they're playing catch-up ball, where they haven't been able to get a good diet and they haven't had a warm roof over their head. So I'm the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee. I'm supposed to give you a big speech about taxes, and it's sort of like having prolonged root canal work. I mean, it's horribly boring. But what my colleagues are doing is making sure you understand what's really on the line. We can't pass on these two programs. They're a lifeline. And I want you to know, those of us on the Finance Committee like Michael, we're going to be working with Corey and Rosa and all of you and the millions of Americans who've gotten it right. The stakes are so high. We know what Doge is up to. Every single day we get more information about them cutting corners and hurting vulnerable people. We're here to say it's going to end. It's going to end by expanding these crucial programs. I'm thrilled to have all of you here. The reality is all the big-time lobbyists and the like, they're in the offices downtown. They're not covering this issue. You are. You're there for people who are hurting. We're going to be with you. Thanks, everybody.
We have Representative Ro Khanna. Thank you very much for coming over.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Senator Wyden, for your leadership. Just very briefly, I need to say that Senator Booker, the whole House was cheering for you. Thank you for what you did.
Amen.
Senator Bennet has got the best economic charts, if you haven't seen them. And Senator Cortez Masto, thank you for your leadership on this. Representative DeLauro has been our champion on CTC. I'll be very brief. Look, they have a theory, the Republicans. Their theory is tax breaks for the wealthy and tariffs. And what is the result? Stock market down nearly 20% in bear territory. Bond yields skyrocketing in a way we've never seen, meaning interest payments are going to be more for ordinary Americans. Groceries are going to cost more. The dollar declining, and inflation. It's the largest destruction of economic wealth in this country of any modern administration. We have a different view. Our view, with expanding the earned income tax credit and child tax credit, is that if you make up to $75,000, instead of getting just a few $100s, now you're going to get up to $10,000 back in your pocket. That's what the bill does. It puts money back into the working and middle-class families, up to $10,000 that you would get if you're under $75,000 working class. So you got two different views of the economy. One folks believe, their side believes you have tariffs and tax breaks for the wealthy, and look what they've done to the economy. Our side believes you put money back into the people who actually work, working class and middle class Americans. That's how you grow the economy. I think most Americans will believe that our approach is better, not just for fairness, but for actually growing this economy. So I'm really proud to work with this coalition.
Thank you. And I'm going to, Reverend Warnock, we are, I'm extending the time because one of the great champions of the child tax credit, here he comes.
Yay.
Senator
All right.
Warnock, we
Senator.
saved you a spot.
Senator.
Please take it away.
Good.
Good to see you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So, in this deeply partisan moment in our country, here is where Democrats and Republicans have something in common. Each of the parties wants to do a tax cut this year. Democrats and Republicans want to cut taxes. The difference is that they want to cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires, and we want to cut taxes for hardworking moms and dads. They want to cut taxes for the wealthiest people in the country who have enough and then something to spare. We think it's a good idea to cut taxes for folks who are just trying to make their lives work, trying to do the best that they can for their children. They think that the strength of our economy is about wealth trickling down. I'm old enough to remember when Ronald Reagan promised us that. We've seen that experiment for 40 years. It does not work. Wealth does not trickle from the top down. The strength of our economy is when we give ordinary folks a chance. It's from the bottom up. And so I'm proud to stand with all of my colleagues pushing for the American Family Act. This is what family values looks like. Family values is not about rhetoric. It's about giving every child a chance and to ensure that a child's outcome is not based on their parents' income. And so I'm proud of the fact that when I came to the Senate in 2021, one of the first things that we were able to do, because we flipped the Senate, Georgia had a lot to do with that, I'm proud of that.
Amen. Amen, brother.
But we were able to pass the American Rescue Plan. And that plan, that piece of legislation had a lot of great things in it, but nothing greater than the expanded child tax credit, which cut child poverty nearly in half. The sad thing is, 6 months later, the Congress went back and doubled it by not extending it. Well, we have a chance to fix that in this Congress. This piece of legislation will about double the amount that families would get for the expanded child tax credit. I'm grateful to stand here with my colleagues pushing for this and urging the Congress to get it done. So we have a word for our Republican sisters and brothers. The eyes of ordinary American people are on you. America is watching. And we're going to see who you're fighting for. Are you fighting for millionaires and billionaires, or are you fighting for ordinary, hardworking people who are just trying to make their lives work? Some say it's too risky. It doesn't make sense to give money to ordinary people because, you know, when you give a few extra dollars to poor people, to working class people, you know, sometimes they do irresponsible and extravagant things. They buy things like a coat for their kid. You know, they take care, they pay for a tutor. They do these kinds of things. And so we will be watching. This is a defining moral moment in our country. And I'm reminded of the words of the one in whose name I preach every single Sunday. Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it also unto me.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Are there any questions for my colleagues before we allow people to? Rosa?
No,
Yes.
Jonathan Slant, New Haven Independent. I covered the original press conference, every press conference you had for the child tax credit a couple of years ago. And you Democrats controlled the House and the Senate at the time. You didn't have the 60 votes to pass it. What's different now? How do you get it passed when the Republicans control everything? And could Congresswoman DeLauro be one of the respondents, please?
Sure.
Why don't you take it
Yeah,
away, Rosa?
you know what? I stand by two principles that my mother taught me many years ago. She died at age 103 just a few years ago. And she taught me many things, but two things, Jonathan. Never give up and don't take no for an answer. And we are not going to take no for an answer. We are now going to contrast what my colleagues have said is tax cuts, which these folks now believe that what happened in 2017 ought to be regarded as current policy so that they don't have to atone for the billions, the $1 trillion that they spent on those tax cuts. We are going to hold their feet to the fire on this issue. If we can provide tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the nation, then by God, they're going to have a child tax credit that's going to take care of all kids. And it's going to be permanent, and it is going to be, we're going to make sure that there is dealing with indexing to inflation, and we're going to provide a baby bonus. You know, times change, Jonathan. Environments are different. This is a different, and it is a difficult environment. But I think we have one hell of a good case to make to the American people, and I think they'll be with us in all of that. And we have tremendous support. I watched the House of Representatives. Now, I started talking about the child tax credit in 2003. 2003. I can tell you now that there's every single member of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives that is on board, and they're on board not just here, but they're on board in their districts to make the case for the child tax credit. It worked better than any other federal program that was out there. And it worked for people. We're going to make it work again.
Thank you, Ray.
Amen.
Please.
Michael Jones with Once Upon a Hill. Thank you all for doing this. I know you all are big fans of bipartisanship, and I know you all have some personal relationships with Republicans. What are your conversations like with your colleagues? And does those private conversations that you have give you all hope that public pressure could help maybe turn the tide and help them change their minds and get on your side?
I think public pressure is the only thing that will change their minds. It's the only thing that will change their minds. If you took their tax proposals, which, as my colleagues have said, are to cut taxes for the wealthiest people in America and let it trickle down to everybody else, and by the way, probably not largely pay for it. If you think about that in local terms, it's no different than a mayor in Denver or a mayor in Colorado or across this country saying their tax policy is to give tax cuts to the wealthiest neighborhood in town and let it trickle down to everybody else. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no other jurisdiction but this one would ever think that was a good tax policy. And on the other hand, we've been able to demonstrate, because of what we did in 2021, that in the richest country in the world, we actually can cut childhood poverty in half. As my colleague, Senator Booker from New Jersey said, there's nothing inevitable about the levels of childhood poverty we have. That's a choice that we've made. We proved in 2021 we don't have to accept it as a permanent feature of our democracy or a permanent feature of our economy. And I think what all of us are saying is we have choices to make right now in America. This is a moral moment, as Reverend Warnock said, the senator from Georgia, and we're making moral choices. And our view is we don't want to leave America's children behind as we make those choices. And I hope there will be Republicans who come to see the benefit in that. And we will continue to work, as Congresswoman DeLauro has said, tirelessly until we make that possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.